The Museum of Fine Arts Boston is reimagining some of its most popular galleries. This month, the museum is unveiling a major reinstallation of its 18th century Arts of the Americas gallery. The new displays feature art from across North, Central, and South America, as well as the Caribbean. The reinvention comes just in time for the nation's 250th anniversary. And joining me now is MFA Curator Layla Bermeo. Thanks so much for being here.
It's such an honor, Rondella. Thank you so much.
The museum is such a magical place. I'm so glad we get to talk about this. The first level of the Art of the Americas wing has not seen a reinstallation since 2010.
That's right.
Wow, since the public opening. Why is now just the right time to showcase art that offers expanded narratives?
Well, as you mentioned, on July 4th of this year, that will mark the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And institutions across the country are commemorating this as kind of a national birthday, right? Mm-hmm. The founding of the United States. And so for us, this presents a really interesting opportunity to think deeply about what kinds of stories we tell about the early Americas. So as an Art of the Americas department, when we say American art at the MFA, we don't just mean art of the US. We are actually responsible for collecting, interpreting, and displaying art from across this country, as well as all of Latin America, Canada, indigenous, and island nations. And so about 3 years ago, we started thinking about this reinstallation, and we knew that we would prominently highlight important figures from the period like George Washington and Paul Revere, but also that it would not be an outright celebration of just the US independence, that we would be thinking instead of about independence, more about interdependence. So how different cultures throughout the Americas are really connected through the materials, the making, and the trade of art.
Interdependence, that's a really good takeaway. We all have a favorite part of the museum, but what is some of your favorite parts of the new galleries?
You know, one of my favorite parts of the new galleries are really how we are bringing objects that maybe are well known into new dialogues. So thinking about like our iconic historical collections, but creating new conversations with them. And so, for example, Paul Revere's Liberty Bowl, absolutely an icon of the Revolutionary period, made here in Boston by Revere himself. And we'll be pairing it with a storage jar that is made by David Drake. So upon first glance, two objects that maybe look like they don't have anything to do with each other, right? One, an object from the American Revolution, the other, a storage jar created by an artist in South Carolina decades later. But in fact, both of them are inscribed and with words that at the time in which they were made would have been illegal. The Liberty Bowl bears the names of the Glorious 92, the Sons of Liberty, mm-hmm. which would have been an underground, secret revolutionary group. You know, could have been charged with treason. The inscription on it even condemns villains in power. The jar that's signed by David Drake was created at a time when it was illegal for enslaved people to read and write. And so when we place these two objects together, we can really see how not only are there very long histories of protest art in this country, across people from different backgrounds, different traditions of art making, but also we can learn more about this country's history, about the different facets of it when we place things that seem very different together.
I love that. I love that. And what are some of the themes that people will pick up on as they go through the new galleries?
Well, so for example, those two vessels, which again, you know, we're trying to bring out a kind of radical new story instead of just having them sit obediently in a case in the museum. Mm-hmm. Those will be in a gallery that is titled Power and Resistance, to really give a little bit of that kind of radical flavor
context
to it. Exactly. We will also have a gallery called Boston's World, mm-hmm. which will show this city's connections not only to London, but also to the Caribbean and to Native nations. And in that gallery, one of the first things that you'll see will be a full Wampanoag woman's outfit mm-hmm. by the Aquinnah Wampanoag artist Julia Martin. So in some cases, we're using all of these different strategies in order to open up different stories of art of the Americas. In some cases, repositioning old icons of the collection, trying to tell new stories. In other ways, opening up new themes through acquisitions, in this case by an important indigenous artist. Other themes will explore the connections between the early Americas and Asia. One gallery will start with kind of the Boston Tea Party as a place of inspiration, but then think not only about the significance of tea, but also chocolate, coffee, and even mate in the early Americas. Some galleries will explore domestic life and how art making was both a kind of method of economic survival, but also a way to decorate your home. And then other spaces will zero in on particular artists like John Singleton Copley, kind of our own star from the period.
Right, the history you know matched with the history you need to know.
That's right.
So the MFA collaborated with a lot of people to make this happen. You received input from local artists, storytellers, teachers, leaders. Why was it so important to be a team effort?
That's such a great question. You know, we really knew from the beginning that these types of questions that we wanted to ask, you know, what was the relationship between Havana and London and Boston in the 1770s? How would paintings or fine furniture or silver from a big city like Mexico City compare with what was happening here in Boston in the moment? These types of questions we knew that we could not answer on our own. We knew that it was really critical to engage not only with scholars in these fields, but also local artists who are making things right now here in Boston, as well as local educators. Many of our guides at the MFA, folks who've worked with student groups for many, many years, understand the deep stakes of a project like this, that students come to the MFA to learn about the history of this nation. And in this case, we're able to provide that within a broader global context that will allow more young people in particular, I think, to see their own backgrounds reflected in these spaces. And in order to be able to really find out not only the stories that we tell, but how we tell them, we knew that we needed a lot of input from the beginning. And so we had convenings large and small. So at the beginning, we had, you know, a convening of about 30 different people that was supported by a couple of different foundations for the study of American art. Later on, we had very targeted study days. And then finally, we also worked with our Table of Voices program, which draws specifically from cultural leaders here in Boston.
Okay, thank you. Those collaborators must be so excited to have that sort of a platform and stage, though, at the museum. It's such an honor, too.
We're also so honored, and many of them you'll see featured quite visibly, actually, in our galleries through labels or on the audio guide or through public programming.
Thank you for what you do. Okay, Layla Bermeo, thanks for being here from the MFA. If you want to learn a lot more about the public opening on Juneteenth or the America at 250 celebration the next day, head to our website. Coming up, crafting traditions and creative minds, how a local nonprofit is offering space for artists to thrive every year.